Hi, everybody. I'm Crystal Haynes, and tonight on Greater Boston, concerns of racial bias in the TSA's new facial recognition pilot program now underway right here in Boston. The founder of the Algorithmic Justice League joins me ahead. Plus, summer is just days away, but days at the beach or a trip to the neighborhood pool can pose a higher risk for kids of color. I'll talk with the senior director of the YMCA of Greater Boston and a teen swim instructor who are working to bridge that gap. A new TSA pilot program is aimed at making airport security as simple as unlocking your phone. But the AI technology behind it is prompting some serious concerns over privacy and racial bias. The program is in place at 25 airports across the U.S., including Logan right here in Boston. They're using facial recognition technology to speed up identity verification. Instead of handing agents your ID and boarding pass, some travelers have been able to simply slide their ID into a machine and look into a camera and be on their way. But facial recognition software has a history of working better on people with lighter skin and falsely identifying or not even recognizing some people of color. These kinds of racial biases are problems that my next guest has dedicated her career to solving. Dr. Joy Buolamwini is the founder of the Algorithmic Justice League and an expert in AI bias. She has testified on her research before federal lawmakers and has persuaded companies to hold off on implementing AI technology until federal regulations can catch up. I'm also joined by Geoffrey Fowler, technology columnist with the Washington Post, who has covered the evolution of AI technology extensively. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you for having me.
So, Dr. Buolamwini, I want to start with you. I read about this technology and the issue around folks who maybe have very dark skin, not even being picked up by these machines. And I'm thoughtful about what this means for identifying folks who may, be called out falsely for crimes or anything like that kind of thing.
Absolutely. Your concerns are very well founded and also well documented. The National Institute for Standards and Technology, for example, released research showing that not just dark African American faces, but also Asian faces, right, were up to 100 times more likely to be failed upon by these systems than the faces of white individuals. There are also studies that show age bias, that show gender bias as well. And so you have a number of communities that are already implicated by well-documented failures of facial analysis technologies. And it's also what happens, right, if somebody is misidentified, which we have seen in other types of rollouts of facial recognition, where it starts with one-to-one matching, like what you might imagine on an iPhone, but then it can go to one-to-many matching where you have mass surveillance. And there we've had numerous arrests and false imprisonment of a number of Black men in Detroit, for example, as a result of deploying biased facial recognition technology. So to see this being rolled out by the TSA is extremely concerning.
And Geoffrey, I know that in your reporting, there's also privacy concerns here.
That's right. There are lots of concerns. On the privacy front, once this information gets collected by the government, what are they doing with it? Who are they sharing it with? How long will they hold on to it? And then just as important, what happens if someone tries to steal it? Believe it or not, this has already happened to the Department of Homeland Security. In 2019, their systems were breached via a contractor, and somebody grabbed photos of people crossing the Canadian border. So there's a lot of questions and things that really have to be worked out before this technology is ready to be used on all Americans.
And the way I understand it is that you put your ID into this machine, but there's also still a TSA agent as sort of a check against that. Is that correct, Geoffrey?
That's right. There's sort of two different ways that they're testing this technology right now. Both of them still involve the presence of agents, again, at least for now. The first one, the one that most people might see at regular TSA checkpoints, is called one-to-one checking. So you literally take your existing ID, your driver's license, you stick it into a machine, and it tries to determine, is your face the same as the face of the person on the ID? If the system rejects it, there's supposed to be an agent there that makes the final call and decides, is this the same person? The other test that they're doing, and clearly it's where they want this to head, is a one-to-many test. And right now that is limited to people who have joined in to programs like TSA Pre. And in that case, you don't even have to stick your ID into a machine. Your face is your ID in a sense, because as soon as you step up to the checkpoint, it scans your face against a database of faces of people the government thinks will be at the airport that day, and then tries to make a match.
I'm also thoughtful, Dr. Buolamwini. I mean, we already know that the airport kind of feels very security tight. We know that there's going to be federal officers, perhaps local officers as well, and especially since 9/11. But if people of color know that they could have some sort of incidence of racial bias through these types of systems, do you think it'll turn folks away from this space, from our airports, and make them feel less safe?
We already are having reports of people feeling less safe. Our own director of policy and advocacy, Tawana Petty, was traveling from Detroit. She has been studying these systems for a very long time, and even she felt like she couldn't resist. She wanted to say no, right? But then are you inviting more scrutiny? And also there are a ton of people waiting behind you. And I think something we have to keep in mind, and moving to what Geoffrey was saying a bit, is the goal is to move from pilot to default and to move to this live facial recognition. And this is especially concerning when we're seeing places like the EU, right, moving towards restricting the use of biometrics because of the ways in which it can be invasive and discriminatory. And so at a point where the US is saying we want to take leadership when it comes to ethical, equitable, or responsible AI, this is a step in exactly the wrong direction. And absolutely, people are already feeling less safe.
Geoffrey, I'm thoughtful also about what are the overall benefits? Is it because if you already have an agent there who's helping in this particular situation, then it just seems like you're sort of doubling up. You're paying for this expensive machinery, and then there's a person there. And if the goal is to then just have the machine, who's going to be there as a check against the machine?
Yes. Well, so when I've interviewed the folks at TSA who are running these programs, they've said that the ultimate goal is to A, be more accurate than a human can be, and B, to be more efficient. However, they haven't released any data on either of those points yet. And in fact, after I reported on this pilot in my column in the Washington Post last year, a number of senators, including I believe all of the senators from Massachusetts, wrote to the TSA and said, please give us some hard data. Tell us how often are you getting false positives and false negatives on this system at airports? How much is it speeding you up? And you know what? The TSA, in their public response to that open letter, refused to say. They said those numbers were matters of national security, and they would only answer them in private to the senators. So we really have to, at this point, just take their word that it is A, more accurate than people, and B, speeding things up.
Also, we're hearing about this facial recognition technology, not just in airports, but in places like Madison Square Garden, in large event spaces and things like that. As this becomes more part of our society, especially when we're in public spaces, outside of the racial concern and the privacy concerns, it seems like folks are going to be surveilled just about everywhere. And I'd have you both sort of comment on that, and starting with you, Geoffrey.
I think when people start to get a sense of what we're becoming, it starts to look a little bit like China.
Yeah.
And China is a place that has, a full throttle embraced the use of facial recognition and put it in all kinds of public spaces, uses it for policing, and you name it. And I think there are plenty of reasons to be concerned that America could be headed that direction. Now, we're not exactly there yet. The TSA, for example, says that the images that it is collecting right now, it does not share with other branches of the government. It does not use it for law enforcement. But, the question always is, what will be the next use? Because we know it's never limited to just what happens in the trials.
Yeah.
And following up on that point, when the government agency, the IRS, adopted facial recognition, they also made a claim, right, that it wasn't being used in particular ways that later we found out, indeed, it was being used to check people's identification to criminal potential matches. So I'm not sure we can completely take the government's word for it. And certainly we are seeing the proliferation of facial recognition technologies in such a way where the face might be the final frontier of privacy. I think it's so important that we have data about the use of these systems. Actually, today, the Algorithmic Justice League, we launched a TSA checkpoint scorecard. You can go to fly.ajl.org to share what your experiences have been. Was there notice? Did you even know this was happening? Did you consent, right? What happened if you tried to opt out because you're not supposed to face any sorts of consequences? And do you have any privacy concerns like so many of the ones Geoffrey has been pointing out for quite some time?
I'm also thoughtful as folks travel this summer, right? School's about to get out here in Massachusetts. I imagine people don't have a choice here. If they want to fly, they have to comply, basically. Is that right, Geoffrey?
I mean, to that point, after I wrote about this in the Washington Post, I heard from so many readers, including people who told me they read my column and they said they read that they were told they didn't have to participate, they could opt out. So they said, I would like to not look into the camera. And you know what they were told by the officer? They were told, there's always one of them. So this is the lived reality of trying to resist this technology in this form right now. And so, yeah, I think people don't really have the option that the government wants to make it seem like they have.
Doctor, I'd love you to weigh in on that point.
I think the right to refusal is paramount. This is supposed to be opt-in, but the reality is showing something completely different. This is exactly why we're collecting this information. So if you have flown, you've had your face snatched, you don't have to think it's too late. You had, for example, Facebook Meta deleted over 1 billion face prints because there were laws against the biometric use of that kind of data. And so it's not the case that if you've already felt that your face has been snatched or taken by the government, that there's nothing we can do. This is the time to resist. The government has already made it very clear that the pathway and the roadmap is to make what we're seeing as a trial or a pilot mandatory. If you don't want this to be the default option, this is the time to have your voice heard.
For sure. Thank you so much, Dr. Joy Buolamwini and Geoffrey Fowler. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you.
The weather is getting warmer and school is winding down. And for many kids, that means beach days and trips to the pool are right around the corner. But for a lot of Black children and other kids of color who are less likely to know how to swim, the water can be intimidating. Nearly 2/3 of Black kids and 45% of Hispanic kids have little to no swimming ability. That's according to the USA Swimming Foundation. And that puts them at much higher risk of drowning. That is why the YMCA of Greater Boston is offering free lessons to hundreds of kids through the fall. This is to save lives and to make summertime even more fun, and we'd like to do that. I'm joined now by Kathryn Saunders. She is the Senior Director of Partnerships and Community Relations for the YMCA Greater Boston, and Samuel Cardichon, who is a lifeguard at the Roxbury Y and the 2023 Youth Hero for the American Red Cross of Massachusetts. Thank you for joining me.
Thank you for having us.
So, I mean, one of the reasons why we wanted to do this segment is because we hear these stories of drownings, and so often the message is that this is preventable. So talk to me about this initiative to make sure that kids know how to swim.
Sure, sure. Well, first I just want to say thank you for having this very important conversation and topic. It's near and dear to us at the Y. We see so many kids, so many families through our programs, through camp, and the ability to swim is definitely a challenge. One of the programs that we're kicking off, which we're really excited about, is called WaterWise. So it's not just safety around water or just swim lessons, it's the combination of both. And as you mentioned, those statistics, I did bring some because they're so important and they're so sobering. 60% of drownings occur within 10 feet of safety, so it's right there. So some of those basic skills could maybe help a child or someone be more comfortable and safer. 88% of children who drown are under some form of supervision. So it's not that kids are necessarily alone, so making sure that families know some of those basics is also very important. And then the last one that I'll mention is, according to the CDC, drowning is the second most common cause of accidental death of children from 5 to 14. So for the Y, we see all of those age groups, we see all of those families. It's really important for us to, again, not just do swim lessons, but do some of those safety measures. And in this sort of WaterWise curriculum, it may be children learn how to ask permission before they jump into the water, so that a caregiver knows that, you know, the water is there. Life-saving moves, it's a cute thing. It's jump, push, turn, grab. So if you fall in or you jump, immediately turn, you grab. So some simple things, you know, I think, you know, the process of swim lessons, I'm really excited for Sam to share his story about learning how to swim and becoming a lifeguard. But for younger children, just those simple safety measures for them and their families can make a huge difference. And we're excited this summer. We've done free lessons before, but Mayor Wu, City of Boston, announced earlier in the spring that the city's going to be partnering with the Y to bring 400 more lessons to our branches, exactly through funding for swim lessons. So we're really excited about that, and those kick off very soon.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, you know, Sam, I would love for you to talk to me a little bit about your story, because you didn't necessarily know how to swim when you were a little kid.
Yes, I didn't know how to swim. I was like 4 years old, and I went out to the Dorchester Y, and I didn't know how to swim. But when I started working at the Roxbury Y, I started as a teen worker, and then I started little learning, like just like swimming, and then just like keep learning, jumping in the water, getting comfortable with the water, and then having a lifeguard with me to protect me if I like drown or hurt myself. So it's always good to have someone with you.
What was that like? Were you intimidated by the water at first?
At first, I was really determined to know how to swim and become a lifeguard. So I wasn't really scared, but I was always cautious because I didn't want to drown, so yeah.
What do you think it means for kids that look like you at the Roxbury Y to have you be a lifeguard there, protecting them as maybe them, you know, going through the same journey you did?
I think it's encouraging because it's just like seeing someone like me as a teen hero, also saving lives, getting in the water, saving lives, and then, what's the word? Just like encouraging.
Yeah, and kind of being an example to them, I imagine. Yeah, you know, Kathryn, we were talking about these statistics in the open about kids of color and these outcomes, and we know that comes from a history of segregated pools around the country and right here in Boston. Over time, is the Y working to change that gap in terms of learning, in terms of the culture around swimming in communities of color?
You're absolutely right. There's a history. It's not just that, you know, young black kids or black families or Latino families don't want to swim or, you know, don't have an interest because we, of course, live on the coast. But through family history sometimes, not having access to pools over, you know, we're talking generations ago, there's just this history that builds up. So one of the things that we do, of course we do swim lessons and of course we do water safety, but we're also a membership organization where we have family members. So family members can come in and use the pool and get used to it and just play initially. And then that gives our staff and gives families an opportunity to get to know us, where if we see children who are particularly interested in the water, we can start that conversation. So sometimes it is talking to the parent first. Sometimes it is overcoming, you know, mom and dad's their fears, because they may not know how to swim.
Yeah.
So I think a part of that is just the access and the exposure. We also start our swim lessons as sort of parent and child. So they go from 6 months up to, I think, 2. Not exactly sure, where the parent is in the water with the child. So that's an introduction before it's just, a 2 or 3 year old who gets in the water to swim. So that helps the parent feel more comfortable. It helps the kids feel more comfortable. And again, it helps our staff get to evaluate, get to know those parents. Then we can help them move along through that progression with swimming. And I think, not only are we talking about kids and in this program with the city, it's not just kids. We actually teach lots of adults in this. We have lots of adults, same situation, who haven't had the access or have had some fears. We do swim lessons as well for adults. And as long as you live in the city of Boston, you can take advantage of this. So the first wave of lessons that we did last year, it was definitely mostly children, but we definitely had a few of our adults and our seniors who wanted to figure out, how would I feel better in the water?
What is that interaction like when you have, a senior or an adult say, I don't know how to swim, I'm, 20, 30, 40, 60 years old.
70, 80.
80, yeah.
We have a fairly large number of people who swim.
That's
Well, we have
extraordinary.
water aerobic exercise.
Yeah.
So Monday, and again, I'll speak for Roxbury. I was the ED there for 10 years, so
Okay.
I do know that pool very well. We have water aerobics classes Monday, Wednesdays, and Fridays for our seniors. So they are all in there. They, do exercise, they water walk, all of that. A lot of them do not know how to swim. So when this program started last year, we did approach them and talk to some of them who wanted to actually get real swimming skills as well. So they signed up from that. But it starts with fun, it's exercise, but it's also a community and it's fun. I mean, I think the kids, the families, if it's you're in an 8-week or a 9-week session, which is typically what a swim session would be, you do get to know those kids and those families because you see each other once a week on the side of the pool, and you do develop, those relationships, and it has a sort of a swim family. So we try and make it fun. We have great instructors. We definitely have been challenged with lifeguards. I mean, Sam is thankfully a new lifeguard, but that lifeguard shortage in the city, and I think all around the country, has been definitely a challenge, and we're trying to address that as well through some of the trainings. We have what we call Golden Guard swim or lifeguard courses. We're actually offering, let me not forget the date here, but we're offering on June 24th, all of our locations are offering a Golden Guard training for lifeguards. So if anybody out there is interested or you have young people who are interested, you can certainly reach out to our Ys, and we are trying to get as many of them in those certification programs as possible.
That's huge. And Sam, when you became a lifeguard, I mean, were you ever surprised by how many of your friends that maybe didn't know how to swim?
Yes, most of my friends were surprised because, I'm a black kid and they didn't know if I know how to swim. So it was like, they were really surprised. My teachers were surprised, my coach was surprised, and my boss was kind of surprised too. But it's really good, and yeah, I have fun.
How does it make you feel when people are surprised because you're black that you don't know how to swim?
I don't take it lightly, but it's like, it's really fine. And, you just really have to learn, and yeah.
Do you encourage your friends who maybe don't know how to swim?
I encourage all my friends to swim.
What does the pitch look like from you?
The pitch, I just tell my friends, just sign up for a swim lessons at the Y. I'll help you guys, and yeah.
I'm sure you make it fun too when you're there.
Yeah, I make it really fun.
What's your, what's the thing that you like the most about being a lifeguard?
The community. The community is really nice. The people there too. Every time I come in, someone always says hello, how you doing? I have a good conversation. And it's just like talking to parents is really fun. And just like talk to the lifeguards is just amazing.
I can imagine, Kathryn, that having an example in Sam is just so important to the work that you all are doing at the Y.
And actually, that was where the Red Cross Teen Hero came from.
Yeah.
We were involved in the committee for, the Red Cross, and the call was put out about heroes in lots of categories. And Teen Hero was one, and, we had, people that we thought of. And as someone who saw Sam all summer last year, and saw what it meant for our campers. He started with us last summer with summer camp. Our 5 and 6 and 7-year-olds who would come in, they look for Sam. They made sure that he saw them. He made fun activities. He would put a towel and a cape, and it was really a great entry and exposure to kids. So when we started talking about heroes, for many of the reasons you mentioned, having somebody like Sam, with all the historical barriers that there have been to swimming, that felt really heroic to me. It was something that over generations, the kids that see him last year, the kids who see him this year, and since then he's become a lifeguard. He wasn't a lifeguard last summer. He's become a lifeguard since. Those kids now will see him again, and now he's moved up and gotten more certifications. So it's motivating, it's mentoring, and I think the more examples, and I told him, he's our example. We want to have all of our kids through swim lessons go through that process and come back and be lifeguards for us. Because again, there's a shortage of lifeguards.
Yeah.
So, and it's really important for us to talk about Sam. So when this came up, I thought, great, let's make sure that we talk about it, because he is that example for other teens or other people to see that not only is it a viable job for the summer, it's actually pretty well paying for summer teen jobs. So, we're trying to make it competitive. But he's just that great example to counteract, generational issues with access.
Absolutely. And in our last 10 seconds or so, what would be your pitch to folks who are still on the fence about learning how to swim?
My pitch would be certainly call your local YMCA.
Yeah.
I can't give you the websites now, but I'm sure that we will certainly send those things out. We offer swim lessons, and again, water safety, we call it SAW, so it's safety around water. We offer those programs. So at every level, if you're not quite ready for swim lessons and you just want to make sure that your family, your young ones are safer around water, call the YMCA, and we can definitely get you steered in the right direction for that.
You got everybody covered.
That's right.
All right. Well, Kathryn, Sam, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you.
Absolutely. Well, that's it for tonight, but come back tomorrow for Talking Politics. Adam and his panel will take stock of the state of abortion rights in Massachusetts a year after the U.S. Supreme Court overturned Roe versus Wade. Plus, Boston City Council President Ed Flynn on his push to make city officials do business in person. That and more is tomorrow at 7. Thank you so much for watching. I'm Crystal Haynes. Have a great night.
How's retirement shaping